when my mom was visiting one time, and when I was editing the film, and I showed her a little sequence, and I think it was that Epiphany wine sequence, and she's like, it's almost like a cult or a religion. And I think that experience is, or sort of common factors, it's like this organic religion in wine lovers.
I was having dinner in a restaurant in Boise. A chef who had been in Portland for a while, he knew that I was interested in Burgundies. He brought this bottle out in a paper bag, poured me a glass of white wine, and he said, what do you think of this? I tasted it, and tasted it, and tasted it, and it was a very confusing wine, wonderful wine, but very confusing, because I said, this tastes like you poured some Chablis, maybe some Pouligny Montrachet, white wines from several different parts of Burgundy.
Interesting.
Like poured them all together. Because it had the characteristics of all of them. And it was wonderful. And he pulled it out of the bag, and it was David Lett's first Chardonnay, first release. And I can't remember whether it was 72 or 73, but it was a very early release for him. And literally that bottle of wine changed my life.
And I grew disillusioned during that time with the all-consuming aspect of American culture. And I decided that when I got out of the Navy, I didn't want to have a normal 9-to-5 American job that was intended simply to accumulate wealth. So I went looking for something more interesting, and I found wine. I spent 17 years selling it in various modes. And then I realized that what I really wanted to do is make it. So that's how I got into wine.
But it wasn't, wasn't a romance of the wine like there is now. It was something you drank, and it was a business, you know.
It was, just hit me like a bolt of lightning, basically, that, wow, wine, what an interesting thing. And I remember when it happened, and I had no, aptitude at whatsoever with wine. I didn't even like wine. I didn't know anything about wine, but...
And that's when I started getting into wine, just started drinking it. Started drinking jug wine. Then I moved on to varietal wines, better wines, and started getting enamored with it. And I thought, well, this is what I want to do. So one day I packed up my car and moved to the Napa Valley, and been in it ever since.
It is the beverage of the gods. And for me, being a child of the 60s and having grown up in a household where wine was not ubiquitous, but wine was around, I learned to drink wine before the legal age.
I came out of the university and basically discovered during my first job and my first exploration of the real world, discovered that wine was something that fulfilled several different facets of what I think we as human beings need, and I specifically wanted. It provides a measure of creativity. It is both hedonistic and intellectual. It has a certain sense of even immortality. The last wine that I touch before I kick off will probably still be a very viable and interesting wine 30 to 40 years afterwards. So I think there are a lot of things, both from the appreciation standpoint, the aesthetics, and from the technical side.
It was mostly my dad's idea. My mom came, we had a as she would say, he had a pretty good life living on the East Coast, and then he had this crazy idea of starting a vineyard in Oregon.
Well, I think part of that was that we didn't know. We were first generation farmers, wine growers, and the whole industry was so new in Oregon. And I think one of the best things our two families did, to be honest, was we just threw ourselves heart and soul into this.
Fell in love with the Oregon wine industry. Pretty much, yeah. Just looking for something to use as a vehicle for this passion that we had for wine. And winemaking seemed to be the right path for us.
Instead of grape growing, it's harder.
I had always basically had, since I was a kid, a desire to do something in agriculture and grow something. And so I came into the wine industry more from the side of growing grapes than making wine. Now, I loved wine, and I had a father-in-law who had a wonderful cellar, and so I had an ability to experience lots of great wines. But wine wasn't part of my family or my growing up. But growing things was. And so I really came to it from the idea of having a small vineyard, selling the grapes to hopefully other wineries around the area. And so that was really how I came to it.
Over the years, friends and relatives would taste it and say, gee, you should start a winery. I told you before I had 6 kids in 7 years. Well, they were little steps. And so I thought, you've got to be kidding, us start a winery. Well, we continued experimenting, and a lot of interest was evolved. People thought, you got to do this. So finally we decided, okay, we'll try.